You missed a spot. Again, the teen sneered as he kicked an empty soda can across the hallway. It clinked and spun until it landed near the janitor's worn boots. The man looked up slowly, face unreadable, broom in hand. He didn't say anything. He never did. Everyone just called him Mr. Joe. He barely spoke, always moved with quiet purpose, and walked with a noticeable limp. Some students said he was strange. Others, like Kyle, the loudest senior in school, mocked him openly. That morning, Kyle had tossed his candy wrapper onto the floor right in front of Mr. Joe, laughing with his friends. "Thought I'd give you job security," he barked. Mr. Joe simply bent down, swept it up, and moved on without a word. That quiet dignity only made Kyle sneer louder. No one really knew much about the janitor. He was just there, silent, invisible. Until the school assembly on Veterans Day changed everything. The principal walked to the microphone and announced they'd be honoring local veterans this year with a slideshow. Most students barely looked up from their phones until the first image appeared. A young man in combat gear, dragging a fellow soldier across a dusty battlefield, blood streaked down one arm, smoke rising behind him. The caption below read, "Staff Sergeant Joseph T. Miller, Silver Star, Bronze Star, Purple Heart." And in an instant, the entire gym fell silent. Students leaned forward. Teachers exchanged glances. The next image showed the same man, this time standing with a unit, hand on a young soldier's shoulder, his expression steel-cold and battle-worn. The room began to buzz. Whispers spread across the bleachers. "Wait, that's Mr. Joe." One photo after another appeared. Mr. Joe rappelling from helicopters, treating wounded teammates, standing alongside generals. Then came a video clip from a decade-old news broadcast. A reporter's voice crackled through the speakers. Staff Sergeant Miller rescued 12 men during an ambush in Fallujah. He was shot twice, continued to fight, and went back into the line of fire to retrieve the wounded. The gym was frozen in disbelief. Mr. Joe, the man they ignored, laughed at, mocked, was a decorated war hero. Kyle sat stiff in his chair, his usual smirk gone. He stared at the screen, face pale. By the time the assembly ended, no one was whispering. They were too stunned. Later that afternoon, the principal addressed the school again. "Mr. Miller, our janitor, served 22 years in the U.S. Army. Please take a moment to thank him. We are honored to have him in our building." That single sentence shifted the entire tone of the school. By lunch, students were sharing the story. "Did you know he led a special operations unit? He saved lives in a minefield. He has more medals than anyone in the whole county." The school hallways, once filled with shrugs and jokes at his expense, now felt different. Mr. Joe still walked the same way, quietly, broom in hand, but now heads turned when he passed. Students nodded, said, "Thank you," held doors open. Kyle tried to avoid him all day, guilt weighing heavier than his backpack. But by the end of the day, he couldn't shake it. As the final bell rang and students filtered out, Kyle lingered. He finally spotted Mr. Joe mopping the floor by the front office. Taking a deep breath, he walked over and spoke low, almost shyly. He apologized for the things he'd said, the way he'd treated him. He said he didn't know. Mr. Joe looked up with calm, kind eyes. He simply said it was okay. That knowing now made the difference. Kyle hesitated, then asked why he'd never told anyone, never mentioned his service. Mr. Joe gave a small shrug and said, "Respect earned quietly lasts longer." The next day, students greeted him with warmth. A few offered to help clean. One student made a card. A teacher tried to get him to speak to the history class, but Mr. Joe politely declined. "I've had enough attention to last a lifetime," he chuckled. But word had already spread. A local news team showed up later that week. They interviewed him at the school. When asked why he chose janitorial work after such a decorated career, he smiled and said, "After years of noise, I like quiet. After years of chaos, I like cleaning. And after years of war, I like watching kids grow up in peace." That quote alone went viral. The next morning, Kyle arrived at school early and saw Mr. Joe opening the supply closet. Instead of walking past, he stopped and asked if he could help. Mr. Joe looked at him, slightly surprised, but nodded. They spent that morning side by side, sweeping, wiping desks, emptying bins. Kyle didn't say much, but he watched everything. And in every careful motion, every thoughtful silence, he saw something powerful. Mr. Joe wasn't just cleaning a school, he was choosing peace after war, humility after honor, silence after survival. For the first time, Kyle didn't see a janitor. He saw a man who had faced things he couldn't even imagine and still chose kindness, still chose to serve in the quietest, most profound way possible. And somehow that made him more of a hero than ever before. Never underestimate the quiet ones. Behind the silence might be someone who's lived with courage, carried pain, and chosen kindness over pride. The real heroes don't boast, they sweep floors with honor. Before we end this story, let us know in the comment, where are you watching from? If this story moved you, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this one. You never know. The next one might just change your life.